All right. Here we are live. Common Sense, Ohio. Nothing better than a little common sense coming at you live from Studio C, Channel 511 here in Columbus, Ohio. We are Common Sense Ohio Show, and you can, of course, check us out where? CommonSenseOhioShow.com. It is November 15, 2024. We are now like T plus whatever on the election, where life in this country is going to get better. Anyway, we've got lots to cover today. If you've got a question, but before I do that, a couple little basics. If you got a question, you want us to cover a topic you think you can handle at the table, give us a shout. Check us out at our website. There's an interface where you can send us a question or comment. Feel free to check us out on all the socials. Leave comments. Norm will reply. I promise. He's relentless. Relentless as the rain. He will reply, and we'll be happy to engage. That's what we like, and we appreciate everybody who's listening. The downloads, the shares, the likes are all appreciated, and they're growing, so thank you very much. Those who know the format that we have sort of shifted to with this live know that we do this day in history, and this day is no different than any other day, except on November 15, 1777. So go back to the colonialists. We signed the Articles of Confederation, our first failed attempt at creating a United States government. It wasn't even really designed to be a United States government. So looking back on history, you had a bunch of states who just said, F you to the crown. We don't want another one.
Yeah.
So they created this loose, I think there wasn't even an executive branch. The president sort of sat above one branch of Congress, and there's no judiciary. There was no ability to levy taxes, which was a huge problem because we had a big debt as a result of the Revolutionary War. There was the federal government didn't have a standing army, no militia, or no power to even call up a militia, gave the states way too much authority and the federal government way too little authority. Then comes along Shays' Rebellion, which was, again, about money owed and taxes. Up in Massachusetts, farmers were getting taxed. They couldn't pay it. They were taking their land. It got violent. I'm summarizing all this, but it gets a little violent. There's nothing Washington or any of the federal government can do because they can't raise their own militia. That resolves itself, but eventually in 1787-ish, we decide that we need a constitution, so we begin this series of constitutional conventions. In 1789, it's ratified, and here we are.
Yeah, and here we are.
Hats off to the United States. And by the way, I encourage everybody to read the Constitution, and this is something.
It's not that long.
As a lawyer, and when I hear people say we need to fundamentally change our government, I have found that most people don't even understand how the government is supposed to operate.
Right.
And when they say we need to fundamentally change the government, I always ask them, what would you change?
Right.
And I typically get the crickets.
Yeah.
I get
or
no
one
answer.
very specific thing, probably.
Right. Or some tiny thing. I'm like, that's already changed, right? So I get all the time, like, well, our Constitution is racist, or it's sexist, or whatever. And, racist, why? Because of slavery. Sexist, why? Because I suppose that women didn't have a right to vote. And I'm like, yeah, but we fixed it. So now what? Like, what would you change now?
Yeah.
And again, it's crickets. So
Right.
when people want to fundamentally change the government, beware. It's sort of like when people want to get rid of guns. They don't even know what guns are or what the definition of various guns are. So, no, look, you want to have a reasonable discussion about fundamentally changing the Constitution, read it.
Yeah.
And when you read it, read some history. Go read the Federalist Papers that go along with it and understand what went into it. It is a remarkable document. It is an incredible, incredibly simple yet lasting document.
Right. And it was meant to be read by regular people.
It was.
It
right.
was not written. Of course, we have lawyers and judges, but it wasn't written for them. Okay. It was written for farmers and retailers and merchants and
for everybody. Right.
Yeah. Ship owners and regular people who, were literate could read this thing and understand it. And that's what always gets me, Steve, is the idea that it's mega complex and come on.
No, it's really not. We got three branches of government, and there's an interplay. And really what the Constitution does is it defines the three branches of government and allots and designates what powers they have.
Yeah.
So
it enumerates them, right? Bang, 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 bang.
Yeah. It tells you what they can do.
Yeah.
And it's very simple.
Yeah.
And it leaves a lot of play in the joints for interpretation and growth. And that's what's happened in our country.
Yeah.
Even gives us, as we talked about last week, a little instruction book on how to change it when you need to.
Yeah.
It's not so easy, but It gives us a little instruction book. And think about it. Like, think how small the country was then and how big it is now, and it still works. It still works.
It's amazing. And this move, it's not Trump, but this move in recent years by the Supreme Court justices that he and previous presidents have appointed back to original intent. I cannot get enough of this. Please continue.
The history, text, and tradition of the Constitution. Now, that's going to lead to some oddities at times.
Sure it will.
But it leads to oddities at other times when we don't follow the history, text, and tradition.
Yeah.
And, these are things like when we start to do things that are outside the rails or off the rails, like create constitutional rights. And look, this doesn't mean that the things that we are creating are not important. So if it's important enough that we need an amendment, let's do it. We did it after the Civil War with the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment.
Right.
We did it.
Yeah. Women's suffrage. We did that.
We did it. Right.
We had booze prohibited, and then we took that back.
But that's a perfect example of the stupidity of making a constitutional amendment out of something that should be legislative.
Out of policy.
Yeah, out of policy, right? That was an experiment in stupidity.
Right.
But when we have tried to create constitutional rights, and the one I'm talking about is Roe v. Wade, right? And that wasn't the only one, though. There was a series. There was this penumbrum idea. So if you go back and read what was going on in those days, the court invented this penumbrum, like an umbrella, that said, all right, well, due process means like you have all these other things that we just sort of take for granted. It's under the penumbrum of rights. And it doesn't mean that those things aren't important. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that it's not in there.
It's not in there.
And when we started to add that stuff, there was no rule book on how to deal with it once we added it. So you were cramming down your theory of what should be a constitutional right on other people that don't think it should be a constitutional right.
Right.
And if it should be a constitutional right, get the votes.
Yeah. If you want clarity, follow the rule book, get an amendment passed.
I remember Obama during the Trump-Hillary election. Well, you should go out and get the votes. Go get the votes. If he's complaining, go get the votes. Well, go get the votes. You want a constitutional right? Go get the votes. Get your votes. Well, it turns out Trump did get the votes, and he did this time. So from that, we will shift over to news with Norm, both Ohio, federal, local, whatever. And why? And by the way, why Ohio? Because as Ohio goes, so does the world. That might be a little bit of a hyperbole, but it's all, this election, it maybe represents that a little bit. And go back and check how many presidents are from Ohio. Now we've got a vice president from Ohio. We got Vivek from Ohio. We got lots of stuff going on from Ohio.
Yeah. A lot of people even feel like JD Vance has already won the primary for 2028.
A lot can happen.
A lot can happen, it's amazing how many people are saying, "Oh man, he's deputized."
Wow.
So for me, what's hot right now are all these Trump legal cases kind of melting away, and the one that seems to be holding on. By the way, Norm Stradamus, predicted that Trump would not be found guilty on any of these federal charges. And he will not be. I was right. But the Jack Smith stuff is all going away. Eileen Cannon ruled in July in a 93-page decision that he wasn't even appointed correctly. Much less that's records case being very novel and that raid at Mar-a-Lago and all that stuff. All gone. That's all going away. Jack Smith has announced he's resigning before Trump takes office. He's going to write a report to Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland will have the option to release this report or not. Of course, he's going to release it. It'll be very condemnatory on Trump. It'll be very one-sided. But Jack Smith and the federal cases are going to be gone. The question that remains, so Trump is not a felon yet technically, but he's been found guilty on 34 felony counts.
No, he's a felon. He's a convicted felon.
Well, I heard some lawyers dance around saying until he is sentenced, he's actually not a felon.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
But they're dancing. Yeah. They're dancing. Anyway, Mershon keeps delaying his sentencing date and keeps allowing for the president's lawyers and for the prosecution, the New York prosecution, because it's a state issue, to brief him on why the federal immunity, the presidential immunity SCOTUS decision in July of this year, how that affects this case. And this case is about the 2016 election, wherein Trump, reached a deal with Stormy Daniels. You can call it hush money. You can call it an NDA, whatever you want to call it. He paid her money. There were terms of that. And what they're saying is that in order to get the money to pay her, that somehow he committed 34 federal offenses that the jury didn't even have to single out and agree on, but somehow he committed some underlying federal crime it was
a state crime.
Well, in order for the state crime.
Correct, right.
So it was
a crime, by the way, that the feds wouldn't prosecute.
That's right. So it was bootstrapped into this state non-interference law. So the state has an election law that you can't do certain things to interfere with an election. And they're prosecuting Trump, or did prosecute him, under that. So it's very complex. There's
what they were saying
layers
is
and layers.
If you fill out these forms in such a way as to hide criminal activity under a federal felony criminal activity under a federal statute, then that becomes a federal or misdemeanor under federal statute. Then
That's
that becomes a New York State felony.
Yeah.
They never really identified what the crimes were in the federal side, but they came up with these New York State felonies as a result. And look, I mean,
the jury instruction is one of the appealable things.
Yeah.
Because contrary to the law, the federal law and New York law, it says that the jury has to decide on the underlying crime. Like, they specifically need to agree that what is bootstrapping this into a New York crime, they have to agree what the underlying crime was. But the Mershon never made them do that.
The judicial instruction to the jury did not require the jury to figure out what the underlying crimes were, or identify them, or even let alone whether Trump committed them. So look, I mean, Mershon, I was critical of him throughout this case. I was very critical of the prosecution, particularly the New York Attorney General, all of it, because they all entered into office with the platform that I'm going to indict Trump. I don't know what I'm going to indict him on yet, mind you, but I'm going to indict him.
I'm going to get it.
And as soon as you do that, anything you do after is suspect, whether it's legit or not.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, the judge here has sort of done the right thing since. He delayed sentencing until after the election. I think that was he didn't have to do that.
No, he didn't have to.
And now I'm not sure that he would have gotten away with not doing it. I'm sure that there would have been appeals and challenges and everything else, but he didn't do it because he didn't want to use his little state court case to impact the outcome of a United States presidential election.
And it would
Good for him. It would have absolutely,
for sure,
one way or another.
Yeah.
And then he's done something else here. He's continued to delay this to get briefing, as you said, Norm, on this new issue of possible immunity that Trump might enjoy under the latest Supreme Court law. And I think what's going to happen here is all of this is just going to be punted. Trump is going to get inaugurated, and whether he is sentenced or not sentenced, whether the judge finds that he is immune or not immune, whatever it is, there's going to be an appeal, and the appeal will be stayed. And in legal terms, stay means postponed, delayed, held off, pushed down the road, basically not dealt with until Trump is done with his presidency, and by then, who cares?
He'll be 82 years old.
Whether he might even not be alive.
Might not,
But it's all going to get just pushed out, and the judge may, in fact, dismiss the case. I don't know.
And Biden has no pardonship on this, does he?
Not in New York State court.
It's the state level.
What is interesting? So
just to clean it up,
the New York governor could.
Well, and all. So I'll just this isn't me advocating this idea, but this is a novel idea. If the underlying crime was federal, there is an argument to be made that Trump or Biden could pardon him for the underlying federal crime.
Doesn't matter because
then there's no New York crime.
No, there still would be. There still would be. So look, I can commit the crime of, say, tampering with evidence. Say I'm in an accident and I go hide my car in a garage, and I'm later exonerated of the accident. But I've still committed tampering with evidence by hiding it during an ongoing investigation. So I don't. What I'm saying is I don't think that pardoning Trump of the federal crimes, in effect, he's already been pardoned anyway because they looked at it and passed. pardoning him of the federal crimes, he would still be committing the state crimes under the state's theory. I don't agree with the state's theory, but he would still be committing the crimes because the crimes were done with the intent to avoid detection on the federal side. So it's not premised upon a commission of the federal crimes. It's premised upon Trump's intent to avoid detection of a federal crime.
Interesting. Well, that would be, I guess, the response to that. So I bet, I've heard former assistant AGs, roll this out as an interesting possibility. But I think most people think Mershon is either going to dismiss a case or he's just going to fine Trump. He's going to fine him something and get rid of it that way. Pay $10, pay $100, pay $1,000 or $1 million, whatever it is, and then we're done.
I'm trying to think what I always look at this stuff, even when try to reverse it. Like, what would I do if I'm a judge in this case?
Yeah,
you want this hot potato out of your courtroom one way or another.
Yeah.
So you make a decision on immunity and dismiss it. It's going up in the Court of Appeals.
Yeah.
Then you're it's out of your hands.
It's out of
the other thing you can do is just deny or not dismiss the case, argue to proceed with sentencing, but then stay it. Then put an order saying, look, we're going to postpone this until the president is over because we're not going to sentence a sitting president. Or you sentence him and then stay execution of the sentence until the presidency is over. Whatever you do, I would do nothing to impact the sitting president, the executive of the United States of America.
Can all of that be done by January 6th, though?
Oh, yeah.
Could it be?
That could be done today.
Oh, could it? Okay.
He's given them till November the 26th to return their briefs.
Okay.
And then the scuttlebutt is his next decision date is December the 2nd.
Okay. All right.
So, but he doesn't have to stick to that per se.
Sure.
Yeah, generally. I mean, look, judges do their job, generally speaking. So he's going to want this out of it. He's going to want it resolved one way or another. And how that happens, I don't know. But this is the problem, right? You have a sticky, stupid prosecution, and now you got a sticky, stupid mess you got to clean up.
Yeah.
Like this case should not have been brought in the first place. Yeah. And it was a political trope. I don't care what you say. I mean, I really don't care what you say because anybody else who would have done this, they wouldn't have been prosecuted.
No.
Whether it's a legitimate crime or not. So it shouldn't. It was prosecuted to say more than half the country. I can safely say now probably would say this was prosecuted in order to gain a political advantage.
It was lawfare.
Now maybe half or maybe a little less than half the country would disagree, but isn't that the point? It's like reasonable minds can differ on this.
So
Brad shouldn't have been brought.
Professor Brad Smith, who was head of the FEC for a while, for Elections Committee, he was all ready to testify in this case, and Mershon would not let him testify. And his testimony was that per previous Supreme Court decisions, that actually paying somebody for an NDA or hush money is perfectly legal. It's perfectly legal. So the whole concept of paying Stormy Daniels as an election violation.
What they were saying is by paying her, it was really an election contribution.
Exactly.
And it was a stretch either way.
So right? John Edwards was charged for the very same thing. It was a girlfriend situation paid out of the, right? And the Supreme Court ruled that it
was not really a contribution. Right. So anyway, so if it's I guess what the theory would be, as soon as it's an election contribution, then you have certain obligations to disclose it.
Right.
And he didn't disclose it. And that was a federal crime. And therefore, because he doctored his tax documents in state court to call it he called it legal fees instead of whatever. So he called it legal fees to his lawyer.
Right.
Lawyer used that money to pay her off. And therefore, he did that with the intent to avoid or to cover up his federal crimes that weren't really crimes. So therefore, New York indicted him on felonies. I mean, it was
there's layers of appealable issues.
It was a nonsensical mess that it was probably going to get reversed on appeal. Who knows? I don't know what the New York courts would have done. Sure. Sooner or later, would have found the federal courts.
Yeah. Well, turning to Ohio, then we have a case here this week where near Columbus, there's a school district called Olentangy Orange. High school principal, hot on the heels of the election results, which she was not happy with, issued a school-wide email.
Yeah, this is tragic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what she's thinking.
What was that then?
A school-wide email calling the election of Donald Trump, hideous and fascist and all that, and that a vote for Kamala was a vote for lightness and brightness and And, she was basically in the email complaining about the election results. She's the high school principal.
The email was sent to who?
It was sent to board members, parents, school-wide. And it was totally inappropriate.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to fire her, but they did put her on administrative leave.
And
she's a high school principal.
Well, I would think the same way if the election turned the other way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course, right?
No.
Of course.
No.
Well, and not only that, but if it goes the other way, here's the difference. If it goes the other way, then...
Or she would have written the email complaining that Harris won.
Yeah, well...
I would say the same. You know what I mean?
No, I know.
Absolutely.
I know.
It's the same...
But what I'm saying is that this principal would have been the first person... to
flip out,
to complain if somebody let's just say that somebody sends an email out to the entire school district saying, "Thank goodness the world is saved. Trump was elected.
Right.
Life is great."
That's totally inappropriate.
This principal would have gone berserk.
Exactly right.
Would have gone berserk. And reversed, if a principal said something the other way, it's like. Whenever you test these theories, always apply it both ways.
Absolutely.
And if you can't do that, it's sort of like now all these senators are being asked, do you still want to get rid of the filibuster?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, not now, because we don't have control over both branches.
I mean, in federal law, there's an actual prohibition against federal employees when they're on the job participating in politics.
In politics, right.
And this is the same thing. And it's like...
I thought you were going a different direction, because there's been, look, the people who are up in arms, like kids even, and there's, the mental health as a result of all of what's going on in the world. And I'm not just going to blame the election. Clearly, that's not.
No, yeah.
But it's like...
people are stressed out.
We went through a news cycle here where everybody said, the world is going to end. You're going to have no rights.
Right.
Oprah is saying... you're not going to even be, this may be the last chance you ever get to vote. This man's Hitler, all of this insanity. And now you've got this fallout where people are just going berserk. I mean, people are committing suicide. This is horrible.
Yeah.
And you hear these screams on YouTube and Facebook. It's like, and they mean it.
They mean it.
And come on, people.
Yeah. There's a case in LA, a case in Connecticut, all over where these teachers, there's other cases, but I'm just going to stick with educators at this point, where teachers have done similar things, on YouTube or Twitter or whatever. Even this guy in his classroom, a much loved teacher in L.A., a man, some kid taped him, like during the class, and he's dropping the F-bomb and he's going wild about how it's all over. I feel so sorry for your generation. We let you down. Kamala should be president. And, just going on. And you're like, dude, you're a teacher.
Yeah. So you were in high school from when to when?
72 to 76.
Okay, you were in high school.
I graduated in 88, so 84 to 88.
Yeah, I was in high school in 80 to 84.
Yeah.
I don't recall, and I preface that by saying I don't recall any teacher talking about politics.
No, it was very apolitical.
We talked about current events.
At least I don't recall.
We talked about current events.
Right. I don't recall it at least.
But we studied both sides of it. So when I was in high school, the Vietnam War had not ended yet, right? Yeah. It 72 to 76, and there were riots on campus. Yeah. Kent State had just happened, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we were being, like, it was a rough time socially in America. I mean, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, Vietnam, anti-war protests, people going to Canada to avoid the draft. I mean, shit was flying around. And we studied that, but we studied it
academically.
Academically,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I see the difference when my kids were in school and the teachers openly talking about politics.
Yeah, mine in Upper Arlington for sure.
What is that
about?
Right. What are you doing?
What are you doing?
So unprofessional.
I think it is too. Maybe I'm out of touch. I don't know.
Not just politics though, but social justice type stuff, wokeness type stuff. So I'm seeing that infiltrating
into that for sure.
Infiltrating into like, my son's like, look, I have to have a certain attitude in my writing and my answers to these questions in literature because otherwise I won't get a good grade.
Like the young lady at the University of Cincinnati.
Right. It's like that. And he's right.
Yeah, he is right.
He's right. And
he is right.
It's not all his teachers, but there's a few.
Yeah.
And, you know who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
who you are. And when I was in college, though, there was a couple professors like that. I had a friend of mine who took a course in Vietnam history or something and wrote a 15-page paper, and it was a phenomenal paper, and he didn't get an A because the professor disagreed with his conclusions.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're going to ask a student to write an opinion paper, the opinion shouldn't matter.
Right.
Right. It's how the opinion
how you
is
support
formulated.
it. Yeah.
How
Did he
formulated.
build an argument
Right.
and support it?
Whether it's crap or not, it doesn't matter. It's how did you get there?
How'd you get there?
That's
So
Yeah.
you can disagree with the outcome all you want. So
Sure.
this is law school. I do a podcast, Norm, called "They Don't Teach You That in Law School." So any lawyer talk, check it out, folks. And they don't teach you this in law school.
Yeah.
But I had 2 law students here, and I was talking to them about this. When you write your law school exams, understand there's going to be a majority view on what the law is, a minority view on what the law is. Write the arguments for both sides and pick one. It doesn't matter which one you pick. You just
Right.
have to support it. That is good lawyering. That is good lawyering.
Absolutely.
Now, you can have your own personal opinions, and this judge in New York can have his own personal opinions.
Yeah.
But what the law says and how you support it is what really matters.
That's right.
And then the outcome of these things, as the law changes, because it's impossible to say humans aren't going to, the human opinions aren't going to infiltrate the decisions. They will.
They will.
But the idea is it moves slowly, and
Yeah.
this is called common law because it was the law common to the land. As society changes, the law changes. As law changes, society changes, and it's this give and take. And I find it fascinating. The Western legal history is fascinating that
It
way.
is.
And when teachers are not teaching this, when we are not teaching our kids to look, the term is called critical thinking. When we are not teaching our kids to
Yeah.
engage in critical thinking, but rather to agree with you are doing us a disservice. You're doing the educational system a disservice.
Last show, we had so much to talk about following the election that we didn't get to this. But there was a news item, a major report came out on the effects, and this just is talking about time of the day, like how many hours of the day do you have to instruct, in this case it was medical students. So what they're saying is that DEI class time is now so great for future doctors.
Oh yeah, I've seen. And
they're
some of
like,
these-
and I happen to have a doctor in training that's pretty close to me, family member. But and he said, Dad, it's true that we should be studying anatomy and hard science stuff, and we're spending an hour or 2 hours a semester on stuff that really in the old days we would just call it ethics, where you treat everybody the same and you treat the patient as a whole person. And he's like, we know that. Well, like mostly we have nice people that go to medical school. We don't need to be taught for 2 or 3 hours or whatever, an hour or 2 hours a day. We don't need this information. We need the other information on how to actually treat and diagnose and pharmaceuticals. And in the report that I was referring to has said that is probably going to have a deleterious effect on future doctors.
of course it will, right?
Yeah.
And look, or
Because
it's
they're
gonna-
not getting the
It's
education.
impacting your pocketbook if nothing else. And,
Yeah.
why in law school they used to teach a class that one of your first classes was always legal history. Get a little bit of foundation
Yeah.
from going back to
Yeah.
common law times in England
Right.
and France.
Yeah.
And then right about when I was in law school in the early 90s, they switched to this thing called, quote, legal systems, which was like this sort of, it was like the legal version of critical race theory. It was like we're going to be critical of the law. We're going to change how it should be. We're not going to teach it this way. It was like,
Yeah.
and it was a political implement for somebody with an opinion to cram it down on law students. And I didn't even realize at the time. Now that was only a semester long class. I don't know what they're doing now, but I fear.
It's off the.
I fear the
yeah.
worst.
Yeah,
I fear the
it's
worst.
bad.
I think if nothing else, what we have learned in the last week and a half is that America's sick of it.
They're tired of it.
They're sick of it.
Yeah.
It certainly has that lacing of it, doesn't it? Yeah,
Yep.
they're just like,
Yeah.
okay, we're done, and boy, I've seen it kind of going back to national, I guess, but that talk about everybody throwing Biden under the bus on this one.
Oh yeah. He's
Sick of it. He's just not there,
Yeah.
and didn't help anything.
He
That whole process of
But wasn't it nice to see?
Harris coming in under the guise of him going out, and it just backfired completely. But anyway, not to get back to national, but yeah.
Well, one nice thing to say, it's not my wonderful thing, but this was kind of wonderful, that you had the president-elect Trump sitting down at a fireplace with the sitting president, Joe Biden, and them talking civilly to each other for 2 hours.
Well, Trump saying, politics is a nasty business, and it's sort of over now, and it's not so nasty anymore.
You called me Hitler and Mussolini, but he did, maybe he's learned something after 4 years out in the diaspora.
Well, he did the same thing with Obama in 2016.
Let's let it go, and let's move on.
Yeah, so it shows you how far afield our political system or the political debate has gone. So they're out there screaming, "This guy is Hitler," and yet he's meeting with him in the White House. So it does reflect something here, how rhetorical this BS really is.
And voters, those that are going off the deep end, need to see that.
Need to see it. This was a lie.
Listen to it. It's all theater. It's all dramatics. Right. Yes, okay, there's some things you should be aware of then. If you're not liking where it goes, voice it as you have always done. But they're sitting down for 2 hours and not bickering.
So here's
theater.
I wouldn't sit down with Adolf Hitler and have coffee.
No.
Right? You wouldn't do it.
No, you would shoot him or something, right? You would eliminate,
people did before Hitler became Hitler, or before he did what he did, and maybe they didn't know. But looking back, would you say this guy's akin to Hitler?
Yeah, that's right.
And do anything other than kill him?
Well, there's the old ethical debate about the Hitler baby, right? When he was maybe 2 years old,
would you kill him?
Yeah, right.
Would you abort Hitler? Right.
Knowing what he was going to grow into. So where I get off on this is so my friend here, Brett, clearly he used the word asshole. I'm not too far from Brett on that. I think Trump is probably an asshole.
I'm sure he probably is. So we all know people that are like that and call them that.
So the difference is some people who thought that voted against him. And maybe for that reason. Other people looked past that and said, I'm into the policy. Yeah, and Nikki Haley said this. Look, I'm looking past, the messenger to the message. And if he's going to implement these policies, then I'm going to vote for him.
Yeah. See, I don't know. Look, I'm not even going to go so far as this. I don't think my opinions on Trump have gone roller coaster over the years, but I don't think he's an asshole.
I think for everybody.
I don't think he's an asshole. I think he's just a brawler. And if you call Trump an asshole, he's going to come back with another insult for you.
Oh yeah.
It'll be funnier.
Yeah.
And if you call him, if you come back with something else, he'll come back with something else.
He's a brawler.
He won't stop.
Yeah.
Right.
And he is the guy you don't pick a shot or a insult match with because he's good at it.
Yeah.
And he's from New York and he's in the streets.
And he's going to give you a nickname that's
he's going to give you a nickname. And he's the guy.
Whether his nickname sticks with him or his followers stick to it.
So that's right.
Okay, we can call her that now.
Anybody, any man, any boy, any man who was on a football team or in a locker room or in a group of friends, that's Trump.
Oh yeah, that is.
So I had stupid nicknames. I gave people stupid nicknames, and I had some quippy insults, and I had to take some quippy insults.
That's right.
And that's Trump, and I think he really looks at it that way.
I do too.
And I think Trump really, at some point, Trump was very surprised at how much, I think to some extent, he was not serious, but everybody else was. I think to some extent, I think he underestimated how much people would come after him.
Yeah.
I think he underestimated that the first time around, which is a nice shift into his cabinet selection.
Yes, it is. And so, Steve, I like that thought. So what that makes me think is one thing that I definitely believe Trump violated in his first term was the sanctity of the bully pulpit. Like these texts while he's on the toilet and stuff like that. That was crazy stuff.
Right.
I don't know why he was doing stuff like that, responding to Rosie O'Donnell.
You get addicted to that. You get addicted because you post it and you want to see the reaction.
That's right. He got caught up in that.
I said it 100 times.
Yes,
Trump without Twitter is awesome.
That's exactly right.
Trump without Twitter is awesome.
As collectively, we don't need it.
So look, there's
don't need it.
Sean Hannon, and God rest his soul. He was killed, and he was killed in Afghanistan. And he used to work for me. He was a lawyer. And I used to ask him about the military because I didn't serve. I respect those who did. But I was like, at the time I was studying World War II. And, there was a lot of sort of mid-level officers that the that the enlisted guys hated. And the word they used to use is chicken shit. They'd say that guy's chicken shit, making you do stupid stuff, just like, just sort of chicken shit, couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag.
Right.
And then eventually we cleared him out as we won the war. But I asked him about that, and he goes, if you don't respect a man, you have to respect the rank.
Yeah.
And, it stuck with me because I go into courts and I don't always like the judge that I'm appearing in front of. And I don't always like the prosecutor who's also in the courtroom. And frankly, I don't always like my clients. And,
no,
but I respect the forum. I respect the decorum of it.
Right.
I stand when I talk to the court. It's always Your Honor. Yes, sir. No, sir. Mr. Prosecutor. And that stuff matters.
It matters.
That stuff matters.
And then to that point, what you said, people took these presidential, like you say, locker room kind of stuff. They took that seriously. He never should have engaged in any of that.
Ever.
That was a terrible thing.
Ever.
He did. And I think he did ostracize and upset a lot of people who, right or wrong, they want a president that they can look up to.
So they took any port in a storm. That happened to be Biden last time around. And then they realized that was a terrible port, that was no port at all. That was insanity.
Insanity.
Mr. Back to Normalcy turned into the furthest left-leaning president with policies we've ever had, and then turned into an empty vessel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, sadly.
Yeah. So talking about appointments, before we get to federal, Governor DeWine here in Ohio has to fill, of course, JD Vance's vacancy as an Ohio senator to the United States Senate. There will be a special election in a year after this appointment. So that person will not only have to get elected in a year from now, whoever gets this appointment, but then Vance's term would end 2 years after that. So within 3 years, they have to run for election twice. Whoever gets this appointment. And I think he's going to pick Jane Timken, who is head of the Ohio Republican Party and the delegation to the RNC. She's kind of a swamp creature. I don't think he's going to pick Frank LaRose or somebody else who's a little bit more, of a, I guess, going to break the normalcy.
Right, sort of the Trumpian idea of coming in.
I was going to say, Matt Dolan's on the list, too.
Yeah.
Correct. So I don't know.
He's not going to pick him.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. DeWine's going to pick a swamper.
DeWine is that's DeWine.
That's DeWine.
That's DeWine.
Looking at it,
and he's already making mumblings about the first female senator from Ohio. So he's doing DEI on us already.
Yep. No, I mean, look,
identity politics, right? It's because she's a woman. Like
Mr. DeWine, I would respectfully request you pick the best person for
this. Pick the best person.
Right.
Exactly
right.
Because we did collectively when we put him in.
In theory.
In theory. And when Vance was, I'm not saying I voted for or against whatever. I'm just saying as the state of Ohio, we voted for Vance.
Right.
To be in that office. So
not skin color, not gender.
Exactly.
Just
so
whoever's best.
The best.
But
and if
here's
she
the
is,
thing.
that's great.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I was listening to, I don't know who it was. The podcast realm has changed things. It changed the election. I think it's changed the newscape. And I think that if DeWine puts a rhino in there or a swamper, as you call him, or her, then beware of the primary. I don't think the Republican Party, I don't think the new Republican Party is beyond primarying people.
Oh, they will.
And saying, what?
Yeah.
No. We're going a different direction with this party. And like it or not, this is the path we're on.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's not the 90s style Republicanism anymore. It's just not.
No.
It's really a lot more like the 60s style Democrats.
It's very true.
So we could look at somebody that's appointed in that office, and the Republican Party may back somebody completely different in a year's time.
Yeah.
That could happen.
I was listening to a podcast.
Primary.
And not only that, I was listening to a podcaster say, I'm going to get him primaried. Like somebody with that much influence. Somebody with that much influence will say, now look, Ohio is a pretty significant place because you got Vance, and Vance is going to be pushing down Trump's wishes.
Yeah.
And if DeWine, that's the other side of DeWine's conundrum right now, is that he's got a president who's going to say, look, you want to play ball with me? Here's who I want.
Yeah.
And it's Vance's seat, so there might be some influence there. I don't know, and I don't know if that'd be LaRose. I have no idea.
Yeah,
but,
or Dolan or whoever.
Or Dolan.
Yeah.
But Trump's gonna want somebody consistent with his philosophy, or somebody, I think really Trump's philosophy at this point is somebody who's not going to backstab him. And and that's it. Look,
a solid vote for his agenda.
Yeah,
you know, and we just went through this Senate majority leader secret vote in D.C. They picked John Thune, instead of Rick Scott from Florida, who was Trump's pick.
Who was Trump's pick, right?
So they turned Trump down on that, and Thune got elected. But Thune has said, you know, okay, we're not going to be a rubber stamp. We're really going to look at his, advising consent on his cabinet. But I am committed as the new leader to his agenda. So he has at least made that statement.
Well, and I think there's more power behind Trump at this point than there was last time.
Yes.
But
won the popular vote.
Won the popular vote. For example. Now, look, as we were talking about his cabinet, and I get it. Vivek, Ohio makes it big again.
Yeah.
Ramaswamy, a good Upper Arlington dude right here in Central Ohio.
Him and Elon, right?
They are the Dodge people. Now, look, Brett, you brought this up last week, and I have heard tell of other, like a few people on the left-wing media are talking about this. Very few people on the right side are really talking about it. And you brought it up. Like, what's his conflict? Like, what are the conflicts of both these gentlemen? Now, in theory, they're positions outside the government. You know, they're like advisors.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so
they're still
right. So
they're still impacting policy.
Yes, big time.
You're appointing one person who has been at the government trough of slop for years.
Yeah.
And he is supposed to be
brilliant as he is.
Line iteming. No, that's waste. And he's looking at waste.
Is he going to pick himself?
Is he going to pick himself?
Although he fired 70% of the people at Twitter. He knows how to get rid of fat.
I don't.
But Twitter was not at the government trough.
No. I'm just saying he's a cost cutter. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
Here's what I think the truth of this is, in both sides of it. One, I think it's true that Elon is going to operate independently of his own business interests. I think he will, because that's who he is.
I think so.
Because he's sort of he doesn't care.
And X has probably proven that.
Two,
he can do it. Yeah,
two, the appearance of it is what troubles me.
Right.
And three, whoever follows him up will have the same power and may not operate independently.
So my understanding is this Doge, which I think that's what
and they put a sunset on it, right?
But I think the word Doge is from Italian politics. I think it was a prince.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah,
okay. I thought it was an acronym.
So Doge. Well, it is an acronym,
but
Department of Government Efficiency.
But it also means
it
also means the wealthy prince.
Okay.
So a Doge. If you look up the word Doge, a Doge is like a prince or a king or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
and they put a sunset on it, so it's a
2026.
2026.
Right?
It's supposed to
July 4th.
That's right.
Of the 250th anniversary of the country.
But I think here's the problem, though. If Trump has a Doge, the next person's going to have a Doge, and the person after that's going to have a Doge.
And we've had them in the past.
This is my problem with all you socialists out there. And fascists out there, is that you think that your candidate is going to fix everything, engineer the economy, do everything they're supposed to do because they're that good.
Yeah.
Fine. Even if I give you that,
right?
I'm going to give you that you have the one person in the history of the entire world that can do it without becoming corrupt and killing millions of people. The person after your person can't.
Yeah.
Right. So this is sort of the same thing.
Well, go ahead. Finish.
I think, and this is what scares me a little bit about it. And again, I'm not worried about Elon because I don't think he's going to impact policy to affect his own self-interest.
I don't think he will.
No.
He'll be criticized.
If he did that.
And he'll be criticized either way.
But,
and he does a lot of business with China, so he's got a lot of, But I think he'll be good at this, and people like him.
And Vivek, I think, is his number 2 on this.
Is number 2. But after the next person, I don't know that we'll have that.
Well, Steve, here's my understanding. I could be wrong. So there is a model for this kind of commission. Back in the Reagan days, it was the Grace Commission, Rich, which was privately financed. And the talk is that this committee or this task force that Elon and Vivek are going to put together is also going to be privately financed. So government dollars.
No, I'm great with that.
Yeah.
See, I feel bad. Look, I don't feel horrible about this, and I think at the end of the day, I think at the end of the day, this is a great thing. My concerns are primarily the criticisms that they're going to take.
Yeah.
And
yes.
It's like, here, start throwing darts at me left wing. Now, Elon doesn't give a flying rat's ass.
And tellingly, the Grace Commission wrote a big long list of things to cut and reform, and the swamp did none of it.
Right. Okay.
So the report went nowhere.
But Trump will.
Well, yeah.
But doesn't he already have the power to do this stuff, though? Is he just trying to say, well, they told me to do it, so I'm going to do it?
No, I think Trump, no, maybe.
Well, he has executive power over his agencies.
But look, this is like,
I don't know.
I mean, look, businesses do this all the time.
Yeah.
So I've got a business upstairs.
Right.
And this year, in fact, at the end of the year, because my business shifted a lot, like sort of tectonically, is that the right word? I had huge shifts because of COVID. And now it's like, I need to go back and I need to audit everything I'm doing.
Right.
Because I know I've got dollars going out that don't need to go. I need to fix it.
Well, think of this as bankruptcy.
A lot of people hire consultants to do this stuff.
A bankruptcy court will do that. They'll bring in a guy who will report to the court of what needs to be.
The trustee of a bankruptcy does
of what needs to be cut.
Get the emotion out of it.
So like I could, and I do this with Glenn, my accountant, all the time. I'll call him up and say, what do I need to do? What's going on? And he's not a lawyer. But he knows business. He's come in and say, look, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Right. And and I go consult with lawyers who are starting their practice all the time and say, do this, do this, do this, do this.
Yeah.
The thing is that it's Trump doesn't have time to mess with this himself.
And that's true. He doesn't.
And he doesn't want to create another administrative swamp creature.
And if he's not, as you pointed out, I'm better with it.
Yeah, privately financed.
I didn't realize
so
it was.
they are not government officials.
Okay.
No, it's outside the government.
Yeah,
it's outside the government.
And they're just going to advise him.
Right.
Well, who's funding it? Who's funding? Who's going to pay for it?
Well, I think various corporations will donate.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
I'm sure Elon will.
Elon might just fund it himself.
Yeah.
Which again itself is a conflict of interest.
He is the world's richest man.
Oh my God.
I think it's awesome. I think hire a guy like Elon who's an efficiency expert, I think.
Yeah.
And
he probably is.
And say, look, fix this shit.
Yeah. Right.
Fix this.
Or give me some wise moves.
Right. Yeah, right. Same thing.
That's
right. That I can say this privately funded organization advised to do that. It makes sense. No,
I happen to know, like in the Ohio government, like in the
Oh,
Department of Public Safety, there's like hundreds of lawyers. I don't know what the hell they do. They all make $125,000 a year. They got full benefits. They do whatever. And some of them are friends of mine. So I'm not advocating for you folks to get fired. But come on, what are we doing?
Yeah, DeWine loves to spend our tax money. Our taxes in Ohio should be much lower than they are. It's really terrible. We are an overly taxed state.
We have a huge government swamp.
Well, it's huge.
It's enormous.
Enormous.
And every time you open up, every time I get I'm on LinkedIn and I get these job notices there's 3 or 4 attorney general jobs open all the time to go be a lawyer for the AG. And look, I love all you guys. I love all my AG friends, but we don't need more.
No.
Don't add to your Christmas card list, please.
We don't need more.
Well, let's get into some of these appointments or nominations, I should say, and they maybe end up being, recess appointments.
Yeah, we got to buzz through this real quick.
Yeah. So RFK, you want me to just read them off?
Yeah, we got RFK.
Okay. RFK at Health and Human Services, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense.
Boy, he drew a lot of criticism, didn't he?
He sure did.
That's an interesting, with the little background he has in the military, but I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
He's got 20 years
in
the military.
20 years in the military.
Active duty.
Well,
and he was a commenter on Fox, I think.
He is a double Bronze Star winner for combat.
I missed all that. Then.
Yeah,
all right, I missed it.
The reason you missed it is because
they don't want you to know.
The other side of the media is like, this guy's just a newscaster. He's got no experience.
He's on Fox. Yeah.
Right.
That's a big crime.
And they
He's
hate
on
him
Fox.
For it.
Anyway, no.
Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. Mike Waltz, Green Beret, Congressman from Texas, National Security Advisor. Kristi Noem, Department of Homeland Security.
Which is really the border at this point.
Yeah. Lee Zeldin, Representative to the UN. Matt Gaetz, Attorney General. Vivek and Elon, we talked about, John Ratcliffe, head of the CIA, and Marco Rubio, Secretary of State.
Look, I think this is a great. No, the other side hates these people.
Well, and the moaning and groaning of, I guess, from the press, going, well, why doesn't he have a press conference to justify these appointments? Like, he doesn't have to. I don't get that.
Right,
You don't have to.
There is advice and consent of the Senate, right? There's going to be a
it's
national
going to go through
press
the
conference.
process. So why is he fighting it in front of the press before they're going through it? No.
But you know what I've
and
noticed?
I'd say that if a Democrat was there. No, the press
I've
doesn't
noticed
have
a couple things. It's like there's a little bit, the media has been declawed here a little bit because Trump did win the national vote, and they're sort of stuck with that. You know, it's like they don't get to say he's cramming this stuff down. Right. Now, the one controversy there, not the one, but even on both sides, the one that people sort of raise their eyebrows is Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
And
why do I see Donny Osmond every time I see him?
He looks.
So he is a guy.
I don't know why.
He is a guy before Mike Johnson got elected as Speaker of the House. He's a guy that caused, what was it, 47 ballots before they could get, because Kevin
he's
McCarthy.
A troublemaker.
Yeah,
remember that whole thing?
Yeah.
So he was a leader.
He's a troublemaker.
Of
he
that,
is a troublemaker.
And
he's a disruptor.
Disruptor is the word I was looking for. And he's blowing stuff up he didn't need to blow up at a time that I think the House needed a little bit of continuity as opposed to what he was doing. Now, I heard the other side of this from all people, Charlie Kirk. I heard the other side of this. And he made a good argument. He goes, Trump's entitled to have his back. He's entitled to put people in place that are going to protect him. After 10 years now of the insiders coming after him,
right,
using lawfare now,
right,
he's entitled to have a guy that's got his back. And I can't argue with that. I can't really argue with that. Now, I don't know Matt Gaetz' qualifications. I know he went to, I think, William and Mary Law School. Am I right about that? But he went to a law school, and he's a lawyer, and he's practiced, and I guess he was a decent lawyer, and he did something politically to get his job now.
Ran for Congress.
So, my first pause was like, boy, he's the guy who disrupted all the House Speaker of the House problems.
Yes.
And but then I got to thinking about it. It's like, you know what? He's just not a deep state guy. No. So we are a little bit like
freaked out.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And Trump can, and as any president can, you can fire your appointees at any
point. You can
fire
him.
So it's not like it's their lifers.
And he will.
And it's not like, exactly, it's not like they're lifers. I mean, it'll change.
So one part of the Constitution, going back to the Constitution, I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's like Section 2, Paragraph 3. The president has the right to, did I lose that? Okay. The president has the right to dismiss Congress if he wants to. He can put them into what he calls recess. He has that power under the Constitution. And Obama appointed 31 members of his cabinet or high government officials that the Senate would have to advise and consent. He was allowed, Supreme Court ruled on this, he was allowed to make 31 of those appointments, recess appointments. Those are good for 2 years. And a lot of people think, since Trump's agenda is going to have to get done in 2 years, right? Because once we run into the midterms,
it'll change.
He's a lame duck.
Yeah.
And,
it just is
that way.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are saying if a Gaetz like that, if he can't get appointed during regular business, that what Thune would do would be to tell Trump, hey, just recess us and appoint him.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're talking about Article 2, Section 2, Clause 3. The president shall have the power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of the next session, at the end of their next session. And, there's some great history. I was just talking about this on my other podcast with the law students. It's like go back and study the transition of power between Adams and Jefferson. And what was going on in society is very similar to what's happening now.
Okay.
Very similar. Down to the media
they hated
excoriating the other side. I mean, and these were the, quote, Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. And don't take those terms to mean anything about the current parties.
Right.
But they are sort of the precursors to the parties. And some have crossed over in various things that they used to believe in. But it's fascinating history. They hated each other. And one of the big controversies was Adams goes out and appoints a bunch of people called the Midnight Judges and a bunch of justices of the peace. And then that led to John Marshall, who was also Adams' appointee for the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. to decide the landmark case of Marbury versus Madison. For those geeks out there like I am that love the Constitution, that created something called judicial review. So that is why the Supreme Court now has the platform to strike down laws of Congress. It's not in the Constitution they can do it. It's not in the Constitution.
Yeah.
But Marshall did that.
Yeah.
But go back and study this history, folks, and it'll tell you a few things. It'll tell you that we survived it then. We
should mention that the Adams and Jefferson thing. So they died on the same day.
And they became friends.
And they
pen pals.
As after they left office, they were pen pals, but there was still that edge. And I forget which one asked their nurse the day that he was dying, is Adams still alive?
No, he says Adams, he goes, you're the last one. Somebody told Adams that he's the last one. He goes, no, Thomas survives. And he didn't know Thomas died the same day.
Yeah.
Pretty. It gives me chills thinking about it.
Yeah,
like
when you think.
The book by David McCullough.
David McCullough talks about that. Yes, great book.
Well, McCullough does great books. Anyway.
He does great
Phenomenal.
books.
My
Phenomenal.
gosh, and that whole drama is encapsulated in that book. That's a great read.
Yeah, it's a great read. And in those letters back and forth, they talk about some of the regrets they have, and one of them was that I just regret we couldn't kill slavery. It's like, it shows you how forward-thinking these guys really were, and this is why I always make the argument. People say we were founded on slavery, and it's a nation.
For God's sake.
And I say no, the nation was founded despite slavery.
Yeah,
and we fixed it in. How many years later? Almost 100 years later, in the Civil War, and 600,000 people died.
You could argue that the founding fathers put the time bombs into the Constitution that led to the end of slavery.
They knew.
Yeah, they set it up.
They knew. And even
then the
Washington,
3/5 of a person thing.
Not all of them
was to deny the southern slave states more power, because if you would have counted each slave as a whole person, they would have had more congressmen, and they would have been able to, for instance, force Kansas to become a slave state.
Yep.
So the idea of 3/5 of a person was to help end slavery. And people cite that as, well, that's proof that you thought black people were only worth 3/5 of a white person. No, you dummy. That's not what it was for.
It reflects how polarized the debate was on slavery in this country.
Yeah.
And because it's polarized, it doesn't mean, by definition, that means that there were two sides to this. There were people who were clinging to it and people who vehemently wanted it gone.
That's right.
And it is gone.
Yeah.
Thank God it's gone.
Yeah.
And at the expense of a lot of lives, it's gone.
Yeah. And our first president was the only president that liberated his plantation slaves.
I think he tried to, but
on his deathbed.
Yeah. I thought he tried.
I mean,
in
his will, and Martha honored that.
Well, look, we've got to go. We did our justice for all already. We talked about the Trump case, so we'll call that justice for all. Let's go to wonderfully outrageous things. Norm, what do you got?
Well, my outrage for the day is this revelation that FEMA.
Yeah, that's mine too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. So we were thinking the same thing. Well, jump in. FEMA had this lady who's now been discharged, been fired, laid off, whatever. She's been making the media rounds explaining that FEMA had orders from above, and that as a good soldier, she was simply following orders, a little bit like the Nuremberg Nazi defense. And what this order was is if you see Trump memorabilia, Trump signs, whatever, you can bypass that home because there's a pattern, according to the upper FEMA people who have yet to be identified who set this policy, that there is some kind of pattern that FEMA determined was open hostility, possible danger to the personnel of FEMA to go and interact with Trump people. So this lady said in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, this order was in effect. And she said, I am by no means the only FEMA person who
this is a whistleblower
who put out this little memo that other people got a hold of.
It's insane.
It's insane.
It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you're flying a Trump flag, which is about more than half the country, it appears.
Well, especially he took Western North Carolina after Helene.
So they skip you because they under the guise that these are crazy people, so we can't. It just shows you.
Oh my God!
It shows you how ideologically these people are tied to their emotions, And, we hate this guy so much, so we've built him into Hitler. We've built him into this awful thing. So everybody who voted for him is also a Nazi or garbage, as Biden said. And I think these people believe it. I think on some level, there are people who believe this.
Yeah.
And it is, it manifests itself in things like this.
Talk about a missed opportunity to, so you see a flag outside of a home and go help them.
How about a handshake?
How about that?
Great point. It's such a good point. What a missed
opportunity.
What an opportunity.
We're Americans. That's all there is to it.
That's all that matters is you're a human being that needs help. I don't care who you vote for.
Missed opportunity to go across the table and say, I don't care who you are, we got to help you.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Or to get to know the people behind this vicious, evil empire that you've created in your head. It's like it just shows you. It just shows you what happens when you celebrate your identity to a group as opposed to an individual. Then that's what happens.
Well,
it's so easy to become hateful. If I hate you because you voted for Trump, I don't care who you are.
And whatever Bible verse it is that what Jesus says, if they don't welcome you home, shake the dust off your sandals and walk away. Okay, so if that person with the Trump flag doesn't want your help, you offer it.
You're exactly right.
You go away. Okay,
right.
They made the choice.
Right.
You're exactly right. And Christ would not have judged people this way.
No.
And did not judge people this way.
Well, see, what this does, though, is since this needs to be investigated. So if this lady is not making this up and there really was a FEMA-wide policy, this explains a lot of stuff that the FBI's been doing. It explains the stuff the IRS has been doing.
This is why I like Charlie Kirk's argument on Matt Gaetz as the AG.
He's got to clean this up.
Because Trump has enemies, sworn enemies, in the deep state, and by the deep state, I mean the administrative state of government, the people that aren't elected.
Okay.
And these people, I think, ideologically, don't like Trump.
Yeah. Well, they don't like us. And by that I mean wider speaking.
Well, I think the intellects involved, I'm going to give them a little bit of credit to know that those who vote for Trump, they're going to call us useful idiots or they just think we're stupid.
Yeah.
But the people in those positions are against Trump. They're actively working against Trump.
Well, that's
and this
true.
is why this is my something wonderful for Trump to come in and say, you know what, middle finger, I'm putting my people in this time. I came in before sort of naively. I didn't realize what I was up against. Now I'm putting my people in. And you know what? That comes with a little bit of responsibility. He better succeed, right?
Yeah, right.
So he's putting his people in. Right. Theoretically, he knows better this time. He didn't leave the AGs. Like all the people that were investigating, he left in.
Right.
Yeah. He could have fired him. And instead, he knows better. He's bringing in his people. He's going to push his agenda. And to me, it is a very diverse agenda. People are going to hate that word, but I mean it. It's like Elon, just yesterday, was a Democrat.
Yeah.
RFK
probably still
is a Democrat.
Yeah, probably
Tulsi Gabbard is a Democrat.
Well, she changed parties.
I get, but ideologically,
I'm with you.
We have some diverse ideas in the cabinet. And hats off. That's my something wonderful.
Hats off.
For the first time, look, they're going to say these people are all traitors to their cause, whatever. But they're coming in with a diverse mindset. To actually roll up their sleeves like I have and fix things.
Like the Department of Energy Secretary, whoever that's going to be. I could see Trump picking somebody like Joe Manchin, who's a former Democrat.
I think he already picked somebody. I might be wrong.
Maybe so.
Yeah, but he would like Manchin. He would pick a guy like Manchin. I think
he was a West Virginia coal governor.
Knows energy. Knows energy.
Yeah.
So look, I mean that I think is awesome. And you know what? I feel like we're on the precipice of a great 4 years. I really do.
What did Fetterman call all this? He called it godlike trolling. He said Fetterman is getting really funny these days. Senator Fetterman
sort of woke up.
He woke up and he said, "This is God level trolling by Trump against the Democrats." Yeah. I mean, he's laughing about it. He's just like, wow, man, you're
give him his cabinet.
Yeah, give him his.
Well, one outrageous thing I have, and I know we're going to talk more about this, is ex-Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder asking for clemency.
Asking for clemency, yeah.
He'll never get it from DeWine. No way.
I'm talking Trump.
Oh,
it's going all the way to Trump
because they were federal.
That was a federal case. Yeah, that's a federal case.
Yeah. He better not touch that one.
I don't think he will.
I hope he won't. But just even the gall of this guy.
No.
Look,
it's lawyers suggesting, why don't you go ahead and ask? Why not? Get back in the news cycle.
It's not
Yeah. I mean, look, I would ask too if he's in prison. So you're gonna.
I guess, but
if I were in prison, I would be doing everything I could to get out.
I guess, but but it's his is more. His prison is.
Well, prison is prison.
I know, but you know what I mean.
He wants out.
He wants out. I mean, I get it. He's 20 years in of life, basically. But yeah,
he might be. Anyway. He might get a pardon or something on the way out. Who knows?
Well, true. But,
so I got a wonderful one.
But my wonderful is yours as well too. Just like, okay, let's
all come together.
I'm optimist that this is going to be fine.
Look, for those who hated Trump and called him Hitler, your people are in the cabinet, at least in part. Tulsi's in the cabinet. Now, Hillary hated her. Elon.
So my wonderful thing, you guys are happily married. I'm a bachelor. Is this 4B thing that the disappointed female progressives have done? And this was adopted from Korea, where
this is awesome.
They say they're not going to have any kind of sex, especially with conservative men. They're not going to have babies. They're not going to get married, and if they are married, they should seek a divorce. And I'm just here to say, as an available bachelor, that the recognition symbol for this philosophy is a blue wristband. Dude, I have about 12 blue wristbands at home in the kitchen. I'm up for this. I am going to be the most incredible progressive lefty.
Good for you.
For a night.
Yeah. Well,
they're advocating for divorce.
No sex.
Divorce?
You don't need men.
Yeah.
Don't get married. Yeah. Now, Andrew Klavan had a great take on this. Our buddy Klavan. He was like, I can't say it the way he said it because he's so good about it, but he was just like, that sounds like traditional values to me. Wait till you get married.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And only, it's like, yeah, great. Do more of that.
There's actually a Greek comedy. I mean, this goes back like 3,000 years, right? Yeah. On the same exact thing,
do the same thing.
Where the women go on strike, on a sex strike.
It sounds like Little Rascals, a He-Man Woman Haters Club. But it's the reverse.
It's the reverse, right.
So, gentlemen, get your blue wristbands. Wow. That's all I can say.
All right, well, that is Common Sense Ohio. We came at you live until 9:07 on November 2024. You can check us out at commonsenseohioshow.com, where we are coming at you right from the middle each and every week, at least until now.